for Leo, it is very, very interesting. There have been very, very interesting Leos in the past. Since he's 14th, obviously we will agree that there have been 13 other Leos, So now the first among them is Leo the Great. You understand? So I'll just highlight a few significant ones. There are others whose papacy were so short or so, forgive me for using the phrase, not of much significance, Right. But maybe 5, just highlight 5. And it is interesting, I must say this, it is interesting that Leos have always appeared at critical junctures in the church's life. The case in point, let's talk about Leo the Great. Now, okay, just context, if you don't mind. Now, when the Roman Empire, the church came to prominence when Constantine became Christian.
Christian, yeah.
You understand? Now, thank God for that.
Yeah.
Constantine became Christian, and Christianity became the religion of the empire. And the church was given respite. They were. It was said that in the council, Constantine called the Council of Trent.
Trent, yeah.
Yes, we are celebrating the 1,500 years anniversary of that this year. So it was said that some bishops who came to that meeting came with their scars from their persecution. Imagine the people who used to cut off your leg are now allies.
Lies.
Yeah, so everybody came, So some bishops arrived at, but it was head moving. They didn't expect that. Okay, so thank God Constantine became Christian. Okay, that was major. Now, but centuries down the line, now Constantine, the empire was so big, Constantine established another capital in Constantinople. So he built a city in Asia Minor, which is present-day Turkey, and named it after himself.
Right.
Hence the name Constantinople, right? Okay, so the empire devolved into 2 regions, the Eastern Empire and the Western Empire. So and eventually over time, emperors tried to duplicate. There could be 2 emperors or co-emperors just to make sure governance. Because the empire we talk about is the known world, all the land surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. So when the ancients talk about the world, they're talking about the known world, the lands that border the Mediterranean Sea. So if you look at that, part of North Africa is there, much of Europe, then if you go to Asia Minor, then you go to Palestine in the east and all of that, Syria, and coming down. So now, thank God that happened, because when the Vandals invaded the western part of the empire, it fell. So that was why, when Augustine lived around that time, as a matter of fact, Augustine was dying when the Vandals were invading the Western Empire. So that was why he wrote his famous book, The City of God. Okay. You understand? Because people were blaming Christians for the reason why Rome is collapsing. But Augustine said you don't need to do that. It is because of your own greed and avarice. That is why Rome is falling. He made a distinction between libido dominandi, where meaning that this desire to dominate, possess, and stuff like that, greed is what is leading to the collapse of. And he talked about Civitas Dei, the city of God, presented that as an alternative. Okay, so when just to move things along, so when the western half collapsed, what subsisted was the church, and that's where Leo came in. So
Leo the Great, that is right. Leo the Great, the first one. Okay. So the first Leo, his major thing was to rebuild Rome,
You understand? And also to stop the Vandals from, the sack of Rome. It was said he confronted one of the invaders. His name is Attila the Hun. Just because they were hell bent on raising Rome to the ground. So he stood up to him and all of that. Then also he also called the Council of Chalcedon, that settled some of the controversies around the divinity of Christ. So that is the first Leo. Is that okay? So a Leo came when the church needed a leader. So the first Leo the Great. Then so that's why I'm saying, if I look through history, it is striking that Leos have come when the church needed them the most. Okay, now the next Leo is the next Leo that is of any significance is Leo XIII. Pope Leo XIII was the Pope that crowned Charlemagne. I don't know, Charlemagne, Charlemagne, the Emperor of the Franks. Do you know about him?
Yeah.
So now in the year 800. In the year 800, Christmas Day 800, this particular Pope crowned Charlemagne as Holy Roman Emperor. You understand? So, and that was really, really significant, because when the western part of the empire fell, it became necessary for them to have a protector, a prominent monarch that can protect the church. So Constantinople has emperors there. Constantinople didn't fall until 1453. So it existed for 1,000 more years before it fell to the Muslims. So the third Leo crowned Charlemagne as the Holy Roman Emperor. That is why right up through history, there was always a Holy Roman Emperor in the West. At some point, it just became just Germany.
Yeah.
At some point, it just became just Germany. And people will say that there is nothing about this that is Roman or holy.
Or holy. And that in 1648 with the West.
So that is the third Leo, Leo XIII, crowned Charlemagne, the king of the Franks. Then another significant Leo, if you don't mind me saying, is Leo IX.
Okay.
Now, Leo IX was a reformer, but interestingly, he was the Pope that was there during the schism. Now, there is a schism between the East and the West. Yeah. It happened in 1054.
Right.
So Leo IX was Pope when that happened. Now, so it was doctrinal dispute. Now, like I said, the first 5 ecumenical councils tackled the issue of the divinity of Christ, because now at Nicaea, now Constantine called the council of Nicaea to talk about the heresy of Arius, because Arius was saying that Christ is not God.
Right.
So, and people were teaching different things. There was confusion everywhere. So what happened was that the council was called to resolve that. And that was why the Nicene Creed, that's why we had to articulate the creed, that we believe in this, we believe in that, we believe in that. And down the centuries, Christians have repeated that every Sunday. You understand? Now, but that wasn't truly resolved, because now sometimes, one thing about doctrine is that sometimes people want to defend the doctrine and explain it, but they will go too far. Explain it in a way that is not part of what is being taught. So there were other councils that followed in order to settle the divinity of Christ. So when at some point the western side of the church unilaterally, so when Christ was resolved, the divinity of Christ was resolved, The next natural question was the Holy Spirit. How do we place the Holy Spirit in all of this? Then there needs to be doctrinal definition of how the Holy Spirit fits in the Trinity. Now the thing now became the whole idea of procession. When we recite the creed, we said it proceeds from the Father and the Son. So in Latin, it's called filioque. You understand? So that part of the Son, the East we're not happy with that phrase. They say no, the Spirit proceeds from the Father alone. The West is saying no, it proceeds from the Father and the Son. So that controversy is what led to the schism. So the break in the thing. So, and there was a Leo at the helm of all of that. Leo IX was Pope when that happened. So that then another
Leo X. Do you have him there? The one.
Yes, Leo X. Yes,
right.
Leo X is another one who was there during the Reformation.
Right.
You understand? So Leo so
indulgences and whatnot.
Yes, he said, Medici. He's the only Medici that took that name.
Yeah.
And maybe at some point you talk about the the contribution of the Medicis in the church and all of that. But that was him, and he was the one who excommunicated Martin Luther, and never called a council. Historians have, in retrospect, are saying, assuming there was a church, because when Luther started out, Luther wanted to start a conversation. State is not right. Let's talk about it. But nobody listened, because at some point in the church's history, people were interested in power. That when you invite people to come and talk about things, it will challenge your authority. So the popes of that area for about 50 or 60 years never talked about that until one of the popes was courageous to call the Council of Trent to settle all of that. So the last major council was Trent before the two Vatican. So there was a Leo at the top of that. That is Leo X. And then finally that brings us to Leo XIII, which is he was elected Pope in 1878, 1878, and reigned for about over 20 years, died in 1903. Now, he didn't make a lot of travels, but he wrote a lot of documents. Chief among them is the Rerum Novarum, which is which is, we say now, and it's true, is the first document that addressed the social teachings of the church.
Right.
You understand? Articulated it. Now, most often, when popes release encyclicals, it's always about issue within the church. Issues about doctrine, stuff like that. But this is one of those documents that is not really addressing any doctrine, but speaking to what was happening in society. So he was writing this when the Industrial Revolution was at its very beginning, and he wrote this when there was this exploitation at the intersection of work and capital. There is always there was an exploitation. Those who were working in factories, creating the wealth, for those who had the capital are not being rewarded accordingly. So the major thrust of that particular document was the Industrial Revolution should not forget the humanity of the worker.
The workers.
You understand?
I think that coincided with Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto and all.
Yes. As a matter of fact, that's why Karl Marx, at the end of all of that, Karl Marx advocated for, let us break it all down. Which is, so it was during that era of Industrial Revolution at the intersection of work and capital, how, so he was some sort of like trying to be a moderating voice that, you know, people should be careful what they do with capital and all of that. So yeah, so that is you know, those are significant Leos of the past, and it's interesting that he chose the name.